I am not someone who scares easily. I am in my late 20s. I live alone in a small apartment. No pets, no kids. I work from home, so I notice when things change. The toy was a wooden dog, about the size of my hand, one of those pull toys with wheels, but the string was missing. It was mine when I was a kid. My mom gave it to me when she cleaned out the house and downsized. I did not have the heart to throw it away, so I put it on a low shelf in my living room. It faced outward, always did, mostly because that was how it naturally sat. The wheels would roll a little if you nudged it, so it made sense. I did not think about it for weeks. One night after work, I noticed it was facing the wall. At first, I assumed I had bumped the shelf with my foot. I live in a small place. It happens. I turned it back around without really looking at it. A few days later, same thing, facing the wall again. That time I stopped and actually thought about it. The shelf is waist high. I would have remembered hitting it hard enough to turn the toy completely around. The wheels are stiff. You have to pick it up or deliberately move it. I checked the shelf. It was stable. Nothing else had shifted. I left it facing the wall that night to see what would happen. The next morning, it was still facing the wall. That should have made me feel better. Instead, I felt stupid for even paying attention to it. A week later, I had a rough day. I remember because I came home late and went straight to bed without turning on the living room lights. The next morning, I walked out to make coffee and almost tripped over it. The toy was on the floor, upright, facing the wall it had fallen near. Not tipped over, not rolled, just placed there, close to the baseboard. I stood there longer than I want to admit. My apartment was locked. Nothing else was disturbed. No drafts, no open windows. I picked it up and put it back on the shelf, this time pushed far back so it could not roll. After that, I started noticing smaller things. It would be angled slightly differently. One wheel turned just enough to change how it sat. Once, it was facing the corner instead of the wall. I never saw it move, never heard anything. I did not tell anyone because there was nothing to tell. A toy changing position is not a story. It is just something that sounds like you are not paying attention. Eventually, I put it in a drawer, wrapped in an old shirt, out of sight. The drawer stayed closed. What I did not expect was how often I still looked at the shelf where it used to sit, like I was waiting to see the empty space change. I still have the toy. It is in a box now, taped shut. I have moved apartments since then. The box has stayed sealed. I know what direction it was facing when I put it away. I have not checked if that is still true. I am a single guy in my mid-30s. No kids, no nieces or nephews that visit. I live in a small one-bedroom place above a bakery. Rent is cheap. The walls are thin. You hear a lot of everyday noise. Nothing strange about it. The doll showed up after I cleaned. I remember the day clearly because I had taken a day off work just to reset the apartment. Threw out old boxes, wiped shelves, rearranged things so it felt less cramped. When I was done, I sat on the couch and looked around, trying to enjoy it. That is when I noticed it on the bookshelf. It was small, maybe 8 inches tall. Plastic body, soft head, brown yarn hair tied with a faded ribbon. One of its eyes was slightly higher than the other. It was sitting upright between 2 paperbacks. My first thought was that it belonged to the previous tenant. I moved in over a year ago, but the building changes hands a lot. I figured it had been pushed to the back of the shelf and I only noticed it now. Still, that explanation did not sit right. I am careful about what I own. I do not keep sentimental things. I do not buy decorations. That shelf only has books and a speaker. I would have remembered a doll. I picked it up. It was lighter than I expected. The fabric smelled faintly like dust and something sweet like old perfume. I checked the rest of the apartment. No other toys. No bags I had not opened. No boxes left over from moving. I texted my mom and asked if she had ever given me a doll as a kid. She said no. She laughed and asked why. I put the doll back on the shelf, facing outward, and told myself I was overthinking it. The next morning it was turned around, not fallen, not slumped, just facing the back of the shelf. I stood there holding my coffee, staring at it. I tried to remember if I had turned it myself as a joke or out of habit. I could not recall touching it at all. I turned it back. Over the next few days, I noticed it changed positions when I was not home. Sometimes leaning slightly, sometimes sitting straighter. Once, it was moved a few inches to the left, pressed against a book like it had slid there on purpose. Nothing else moved, just the doll. I checked my lease, no maintenance entries. No one had a key except the landlord, and he always texted before coming up. There were no messages. One night, I woke up because I thought I heard the bookshelf creak. That sound wood makes when it settles. I lay there and listened. The building was quiet except for traffic outside. In the morning, the doll was on the couch, sitting upright, hands in its lap, facing the hallway. That was the point where I stopped trying to explain it calmly. I picked it up and put it in a grocery bag. I walked it straight to the dumpster behind the building and dropped it in without looking back. When I came home, the apartment felt lighter. I slept fine. 2 days later, I found the doll on my bookshelf again. Same spot as before. Same ribbon, same uneven eyes. I did not touch it after that. I moved out a month later for unrelated reasons. When I packed, I left the doll where it was. I did not want to risk moving it again. Sometimes I still think about that shelf. Not the doll itself, just the certainty I had standing there, knowing I had never brought it home. I am in my early 40s. I work nights as a delivery dispatcher. I live alone in a narrow townhouse that used to belong to my aunt. She passed a few years ago, and most of the furniture stayed because it was easier that way. The toy belonged to her. It was a small plastic keyboard, the kind meant for toddlers. Bright colors, cheap buttons. It only played one song, a slow, looping melody that sounded vaguely familiar but not quite right. My aunt kept it in a box of old things and said it was from when I was little. I do not remember owning it. When I moved in, I found it while unpacking the storage room. It still worked. I pressed a key and the song played, thin and tinny, then stopped on its own like it was supposed to. I put it on a shelf and forgot about it. A few weeks later, I heard the music while I was in the kitchen. I knew immediately what it was, that exact melody. It was faint, coming from the other room. I assumed I had bumped it earlier or the batteries were acting up. When I checked, the keyboard was silent. That started happening once or twice a week. I would hear the song begin, play for maybe 10 seconds, then stop abruptly. Always the same section, never the full tune. I replaced the batteries. It still happened. I started paying attention to timing. It never played while I was in the room with it, only when I was somewhere else. Shower, kitchen, bedroom with the door closed. One night, I was sitting in the living room watching TV when it started. I froze because this was the first time it had happened while I was right there. The keyboard was on the shelf across the room. No one near it. No vibrations. The song played. Then, halfway through, it clicked softly and restarted from the beginning. I remember that clearly. The restart, like someone had pressed the rewind button. It did that twice before stopping completely. I unplugged the TV and stood there in silence. The house felt heavier after that, like the air had thickened. The next day, I took the batteries out and put them in a drawer. I left the toy on the shelf. That night, I heard the music again. Same song, same section, same restart. When I checked, the battery compartment was empty. I did not throw it away. That felt wrong in a way I cannot explain. Instead, I put it back in the storage room inside a sealed plastic bin. The music stopped. What did not stop was the habit. Every so often, I still catch myself listening for it when the house gets quiet. Not because I miss it, because part of me expects to hear that first note again, starting over where it should not. I am 34. I do inventory work for a warehouse, so most days are repetitive and quiet. I live alone in a small duplex. No kids, no pets. That matters here. The bear was not mine. It came in a box of things my sister dropped off when she moved overseas. Mostly books, old clothes, random stuff she did not want to ship. I told her I would store it until she figured out what to do with it. The bear was at the bottom of the box, brown fur, worn thin in places. One button eye cracked, no tag, no battery pack, just a regular stuffed bear. I put it on a chair in the spare room and forgot about it. A week later, I went in there to grab a jacket and noticed the bear was on the bed instead of the chair. I assumed I had moved it without thinking. I do that sometimes when I am distracted. I put it back. The second time I noticed, it was sitting upright, propped against the pillow. I stopped for a moment because I clearly remembered laying it flat before. Still, it did not feel worth thinking about too hard. That night, I could not sleep. Around 2 in the morning, I got up to get water. The hallway was cold. The spare room door was open. I do not remember opening it. I stood in the doorway and looked in. The bear was on the bed, closer to the edge than before, sitting upright again. I walked over and picked it up. It was warm, not room temperature, not from sunlight. Warm in a way that made my hands pause, like it had been held recently. I stood there holding it, waiting for the feeling to fade. It did not. The room was cold. The bed sheets were cold. Only the bear felt like that. I checked for anything inside it. Heating pack, electronics, nothing, just stuffing. I put it back on the chair and shut the door. The next morning, it was back on the bed. I did not touch it that time. I just stood there longer than I should have, trying to decide if I was overreacting. I told myself, heat lingers. That was the explanation I settled on, even though it did not make much sense. That evening, I moved the bear into a plastic storage bin and snapped the lid shut. When I opened the spare room the next day, the bin was still sealed. The bear was on the bed. I did not check if it was warm again. I already knew what it would feel like. I taped the box shut, put it in my car, and dropped it off at a donation center on my way to work. I did not look back when I left it. I never told my sister. She would have laughed and said I was imagining things. Sometimes when I wake up at night, my hands feel warmer than the rest of me. That is usually when I realize I'm thinking about the bear again. My name is Mark. I'm 39. I have one kid, a son who was 6 at the time this happened. We lived in a small house on the edge of town. Older place, quiet street, nothing unusual about it. The toy box was in his room. Plastic, blue lid. It snapped shut loud enough that you knew when it was closed properly. He was particular about that. If it was not snapped, he would ask me to fix it. That morning I cleaned his room before work. I remember closing the toy box. I remember the sound. I remember pressing down on the lid with my palm. My son was at school all day. I was at work until late afternoon. No one else was home. When I came back, the house felt normal. Same smells, same quiet. I went to his room to put away some laundry. The toy box was open. Not cracked, not loose. The lid was fully up, resting against the wall. I stood there for a second, holding his clothes, trying to remember if I had opened it earlier. I could not picture doing that. I closed it and went on with my evening. The next day, it was open again. This time, I asked my son if he had opened it in the morning before school. He said no. He said he had not gone into his room after breakfast. I believed him. He was not a kid who lied about small things. That night I checked before bed. The box was closed. When I woke up around 3 in the morning, I heard a soft plastic sound. Not loud, just enough to register, like something flexing. I stayed in bed. I did not call out. I waited. The sound did not repeat. In the morning, the toy box was open again. Nothing was missing. Nothing was out of place. Just the lid. After that, I started checking it more often. Before bed, after waking up, after coming home. Sometimes it was closed. Sometimes it was open. My son started asking why I kept looking at it. One afternoon, I came home early and found it open again. I stood there longer than usual. I do not know what I expected to see. Inside, the toys were arranged differently, not neatly, just shifted, like they had been gone through without being played with. That was the first time I closed the lid and taped it shut. The next morning, the tape was still there. The lid was open anyway. We moved not long after that. Different reasons, but I did not argue when my wife brought it up. My son is older now. He does not remember any of this. I do. Every time I hear that plastic snap sound, I think about how quiet the house was when the lid lifted on its own. I am a father, late 30s at the time, married, one kid, a daughter who had just turned 5. We lived in the same house since she was born. Small place, nothing fancy. You learn every sound a house makes when you stay long enough. The toy was a plastic kitchen set, one of those pretend stoves with fake knobs and doors that open and close. It came with pots, pans, little food pieces. My wife bought it because our daughter liked copying what she saw us do. Cooking, cleaning, normal stuff. For months, she played with it every day. She would sit on the floor and line everything up carefully. She talked to herself while she played, made up meals, served them to us. She even scolded the toy stove sometimes if the door would not stay closed. It sat against the wall in the living room under the window. That was its spot. One afternoon, she came home from preschool and walked right past it. That alone did not mean anything. Kids change interests fast. But later that night, when my wife suggested she play with it while dinner finished, she said no. She did not say she was bored of it. She did not say she wanted something else. She said she did not want to touch that one anymore. I asked why. She shrugged and said it was not for playing now. That phrasing stuck with me. It did not sound like her. Over the next few days, she avoided it completely. She would step around it carefully, like it was furniture. Once, I noticed she moved her stuffed animals away from it before sitting down to play. I asked her again why she did not like it anymore. She said it made noises when no one was there. I told myself she meant the plastic settling or something shifting when the house cooled down. Old house, thin walls, easy explanation. Still, I paid attention. Late one night, I was up watching TV. Everyone else was asleep. The living room lights were off except for the glow from the screen. I heard a soft click. Not loud, not sudden, just the sound of plastic tapping plastic. I muted the TV and listened. Nothing else happened. The next morning, one of the stove knobs was turned. They were loose, but not loose enough to turn on their own. You had to grip them. My wife assumed our daughter had played with it after all. She had not. That was the first time I felt uneasy about it. Not scared, just aware. After that, small things kept happening. A cabinet door left open. A pan placed neatly on top instead of inside. Once, all the fake food was arranged in a row on the floor like it had been counted. Our daughter started asking if we could move it. She did not cry about it. She did not panic. She just asked calmly if it could go somewhere else. She said it was busy at night. I did not ask what that meant. We moved it into the hallway closet. The door stayed shut. The house felt quieter after that, not silent. Just settled. A week later, my wife opened the closet to get cleaning supplies. The toy kitchen was set up inside. The stove doors were open. The pots were stacked. The fake plates were laid out flat. It looked ready. We got rid of it that weekend. Donated it without telling our daughter. She did not ask where it went. She started playing normally again after that. Loud, messy, like before. She is older now. She does not remember the toy kitchen at all. I remember how quickly she stopped playing with it. Not gradually, not with boredom, just like she had learned something about it and decided she was done. I worked early mornings, so my nights were usually routine. Dinner, TV, bed. The toy was a hand-me-down, a talking truck my cousin gave me when she cleared out her garage. She said I could pass it along if I ever had kids. I did not. I just put it on a shelf in the closet with other random things I did not want to throw away yet. The truck had a button on top. When you pressed it, it played a short phrase in a kid's voice and then made an engine sound. It was already annoying when it worked. It did not work anymore. I remember that clearly because I tested it before putting it away. Pressed the button a few times. Nothing. I even opened the battery compartment. 2 AAA batteries inside. Corroded. I threw them out and left the compartment empty. The truck went back on the shelf. A few weeks later, I heard the engine sound. It was faint, muffled, like it was coming from inside something. I was in the kitchen when it happened. I stood still and listened. Then the voice played. One short phrase, then silence. I did not move right away. I waited, trying to figure out where it came from. The sound did not repeat. When I opened the closet, the truck was exactly where I left it. Same position, same shelf. I picked it up and turned it over. The battery compartment was still empty. I stood there longer than I should have, checking it from every angle. No batteries, no loose parts, nothing that could explain a sound. I told myself it was something else. A neighbor's TV, a phone notification echoing through the walls. That explanation felt thin, but it was enough to let me sleep. 2 nights later, it happened again. This time, I was sitting on the couch. The apartment was quiet. No TV, no phone. The sound came from the closet again. Same sequence. Voice, engine, stop. I opened the closet immediately. Nothing had moved. I took the truck out and pressed the button. Nothing. I shook it gently. Nothing rattled. I opened the compartment again, even though I knew what I would see. Still empty. That night, I put the truck in a drawer in the kitchen. I wanted it closer, where I could hear it clearly if it happened again. Around 1 in the morning, I woke up to the engine sound. It was louder this time, clearer, close. I sat up in bed, heart steady but alert, and listened as the voice played again. Same phrase, same timing. I went into the kitchen and opened the drawer. The truck was silent, cold, lifeless. I did not test it. I already knew. The next day, I threw it out. Dumpster behind the building. I watched it land among bags and boxes and felt a strange sense of relief. That night, the apartment was quiet. Sometimes, though, when I hear a toy commercial on TV or a kid's voice through the walls, I think about how certain I was that there were no batteries left. I checked more than once. I was renting a small room in a shared house at the time. Early 30s, new city. I did not know my roommates well yet. We were polite, but everyone kept to themselves. The toy was a plastic dinosaur, cheap, green, one of those things you win from a vending machine. It was left behind by the previous tenant, sitting on the windowsill when I moved in. I did not care enough to throw it out. I moved it to a shelf above my desk and forgot about it. The shelf was high. You needed to stand on a chair to reach it. I am short. That matters. One morning, I noticed the dinosaur was gone. I checked the desk, the floor, under the bed. I assumed it fell, even though that shelf had a lip. Nothing else was disturbed. I shrugged it off and went to work. When I got back that night, it was sitting on a lower shelf across the room. That shelf held books and a lamp. There was no space there before. The dinosaur was placed between two paperbacks, facing out. I asked my roommates if anyone had been in my room. They all said no. No one seemed defensive, just confused. I told myself someone was messing with me and moved it back to the top shelf. I made sure of it. I climbed the chair. I pushed it back so it would not fall. The next day, it was on my desk, standing upright, tail balanced carefully. That was when I felt that tight feeling in my chest, not fear, more like my body noticing something before my brain caught up. I stopped moving it after that. I left it wherever it showed up. Over the next week, it appeared in places that did not make sense, on the edge of the dresser. On the windowsill again, once at the foot of my bed, centered on the carpet like it had been measured. Always upright, always facing inward. I started closing my door when I left, locking it at night. One evening, I came home and found it on my pillow. I stood in the doorway for a long time. The room felt different then. Not threatening, just occupied. I picked it up and put it in the trash outside the house. I made sure it was gone. The next morning I found it on the kitchen counter. No one claimed to have moved it. No one laughed, no one reacted at all. I moved out not long after that, packed fast, left things behind. I still think about that dinosaur when I see shelves, about how careful it always was to sit upright, no matter where it ended up. I was living with my girlfriend at the time in a small apartment near her work. We did not have kids. We did not plan to. Most of what we owned was practical: furniture, books, electronics. The toy was a plastic train, palm-sized, red and gray. You pushed a button on top and it made a short chugging sound and a whistle. Nothing special. It was something my girlfriend had kept from childhood and left in a drawer with other old things. At some point, the sound stopped working. She noticed first. Pressed the button a few times. Nothing. She shrugged and said the batteries were probably dead. Neither of us bothered replacing them. Months later, when we were clearing space, she decided to donate a bag of old stuff. Clothes, books. The toy train went in with it. I remember holding it for a second before dropping it in the bag. I pressed the button out of habit. Nothing happened. We dropped the bag off at a donation center on the way to dinner. It was already dark. We were in a hurry. We left it with the others and walked away. That night, around midnight, we were sitting on the couch watching something low volume. The apartment was quiet. No neighbors moving, no traffic. We heard the train sound. It was faint but clear. A short chug, then the whistle. My girlfriend muted the TV and looked at me. I did not say anything. I was trying to place the sound, even though I already knew what it was. It came from the hallway. We both stood up and checked the apartment. Closet, bathroom, kitchen, nothing. No toys, no electronics that could make that noise. The sound did not repeat. We stood there for a while, not speaking. Then we went back to the couch and turned the TV back on. Neither of us slept well. The next day, my girlfriend called the donation center. She asked if bags ever got mixed up or returned by mistake. They said no. Everything was already sorted. That should have been the end of it. A week later, I heard the sound again while she was at work. Same sequence. Chug, whistle, stop. I was alone in the apartment. I checked every room. Nothing had changed. Nothing new had appeared. When I told her, she went quiet. She did not argue. She did not joke. We did not hear it again after that. We broke up about a year later for unrelated reasons. I moved out first. She stayed. We do not talk now. Sometimes, when I walk past a toy aisle in a store, I catch myself listening for that sound. Not because I expect to hear it again, because part of me still wonders where it finished playing. I am a father, late 30s at the time, married, one kid, a daughter who had just turned 5. We lived in the same house since she was born. Small place, nothing fancy. You learn every sound a house makes when you stay long enough. The toy was a plastic kitchen set, one of those pretend stoves with fake knobs and doors that open and close. It came with pots, pans, little food pieces. My wife bought it because our daughter liked copying what she saw us do. Cooking, cleaning, normal stuff. For months, she played with it every day. She would sit on the floor and line everything up carefully. She talked to herself while she played, made up meals, served them to us. She even scolded the toy stove sometimes if the door would not stay closed. It sat against the wall in the living room under the window. That was its spot. One afternoon, she came home from preschool and walked right past it. That alone did not mean anything. Kids change interests fast. But later that night, when my wife suggested she play with it while dinner finished, she said no. She did not say she was bored of it. She did not say she wanted something else. She said she did not want to touch that one anymore. I asked why. She shrugged and said it was not for playing now. That phrasing stuck with me. It did not sound like her. Over the next few days, she avoided it completely. She would step around it carefully, like it was furniture. Once, I noticed she moved her stuffed animals away from it before sitting down to play. I asked her again why she did not like it anymore. She said it made noises when no one was there. I told myself she meant the plastic settling or something shifting when the house cooled down. Old house, thin walls, easy explanation. Still, I paid attention. Late one night, I was up watching TV. Everyone else was asleep. The living room lights were off except for the glow from the screen. I heard a soft click. Not loud, not sudden, just the sound of plastic tapping plastic. I muted the TV and listened. Nothing else happened. The next morning, one of the stove knobs was turned. They were loose, but not loose enough to turn on their own. You had to grip them. My wife assumed our daughter had played with it after all. She had not. That was the first time I felt uneasy about it. Not scared, just aware. After that, small things kept happening. A cabinet door left open, a pan placed neatly on top instead of inside. Once, all the fake food was arranged in a row on the floor like it had been counted. Our daughter started asking if we could move it. She did not cry about it. She did not panic. She just asked calmly if it could go somewhere else. She said it was busy at night. I did not ask what that meant. We moved it into the hallway closet. The door stayed shut. The house felt quieter after that, not silent, just settled. A week later, my wife opened the closet to get cleaning supplies. The toy kitchen was set up inside. The stove doors were open. The pots were stacked. The fake plates were laid out flat. It looked ready. We got rid of it that weekend. Donated it without telling our daughter. She did not ask where it went. She started playing normally again after that. Loud, messy, like before. She is older now. She does not remember the toy kitchen at all. I remember how quickly she stopped playing with it. Not gradually, not with boredom. Just like she had learned something about it and decided she was done.